always call him the largest, nicest man in the world.
All alone, betrayed and adrift.
He's one of the nicest guys I ever met, because he didn't have a malice in him.
I'd like to give you a physical examination.
Let's get physical.
He had a really instant effect on people.
I think Kevin embodied generosity. He seemed to be so giving of everything.
Arrangement going on there, that's nice and snug, thank you.
It was very easy to think of Kevin as a superstar, but underneath that there was this human being who was appreciative and kind.
Kevin Smith, Kev, was probably best known as an actor, a very handsome, acclaimed lead actor. But he was also extraordinarily witty, amazingly gifted musically, and an all-round entertainer. He'd already achieved incredible success, and he was on the verge of another break, a major Hollywood role playing alongside Bruce Willis. But on February the 16th, 2002, after an accidental fall on a film set, he died. This is our tribute to Kev, our colleague, our friend. Kevin Todd Smith was born in Auckland on March 16, 1963, the first child for his parents Yvonne and Jeff. 2 years later, his younger sister Sandy was born. Kevin's dark looks came from his Tongan heritage on his mother's side. His dad, Jeff, was in the Navy, and Kevin spent his first 10 years growing up on Auckland's North Shore. The family moved to Sydney briefly, but then in 1974 they moved to Timaru, close to Jeff's family, and it was there that Kevin spent the rest of his childhood.
Kev had a really good relationship with his parents, as did his sister, and when we were young, I spent a lot of time at Kev's place, because Kev's parents really were cool. They treated you like a human being more than a kid. Kev's father was musical. Whenever you went round to visit the Smiths, Kev's father was as often as not sitting on the couch with a guitar playing Kenny Rogers songs.
Kev went to Timaru Boys High School. It was a traditional school with an emphasis on sports and academic success. But Kev's interests lay more with the arts.
Kev mixed in a certain circle, and they were people who were slightly artistic, slightly musical, just slightly a bit different to the norm.
In '78, Kev met his future wife, Sue. They were both just 15, and their mums engineered their first date.
Our mums worked together at an old person's home, and yeah, they jacked up a because they live around the corner from us, you know. So they jacked up. They needed. We went to a wedding. Just just go along together. So 20 years later, they.
I don't want to get cliched about it, but they were childhood sweethearts, and they were always together. They stayed together for the duration.
After leaving school, Kev moved to Christchurch, but he struggled, missing Sue, who'd remained in Timaru.
It was a very bad year for Kev. He didn't really give a toss about anything. It was hard for him and Sue to be apart.
In Christchurch, Kev dabbled at university, worked in a grain store and sang in a band called Say Yes to Apes. Music was his passion and performing his forte.
No one will publish the splashdown.
The place that you'd see Kev most often was in someone's backyard playing a guitar. That's would be so normal in Christchurch. You know, of all my memories of Kev, the one thing that always just sticks there is just how beautifully he sang Elvis. And if you close your eyes when Kev was singing Elvis, there's no way I could ever pick that it wasn't.
Although acting was to become the central focus of Kev's career, he always found time for music. He sang in theatre, concerts in the park, and in the mid-90s he was part of the celebrity band, the Wide Lapels. Kev's musical talents were just one aspect of his gift as a performer. Back in Christchurch in the mid-80s, the world of television was beckoning ever so slightly.
Well, you'd have to say that Crime Watch was Kev's first lead role. What had happened was somebody had robbed a massage parlour and they wanted somebody to play this large guy who'd robbed the massage parlour. So they gave him the job and they took him down to the massage parlour to meet the guy who was actually robbed. And the way the story goes, the guy took one look at Kev and pointed at him and said, "Yes, that's him. Well done, you've caught him," not realising that he was actually the actor playing the part.
Well, I'm here at Auckland Airport to talk to...
It was a small beginning, but it led on to other roles.
Rugby megastar John Kirwan.
Oh, g'day.
John, you've just returned from this amazing, this devastating, this obliterating tour of the land of the rising sun.
No, I've just come back from Japan.
John, not only a great winger, a great wit as well.
Kev found it difficult without Sue, lacking focus and direction, but that all changed when Sue and he were reunited in 1984. And at just 21, they were married in their hometown of Timaru.
Yeah, they married young, but they'd already been together for ages. It was no surprise when Kev and Sue got married. It was the most natural thing in the world.
It was Sue who steered him to his first theatre role. She saw a casting call for the touring stage show Are You Lonesome Tonight? Knowing Kev's love of Elvis, she encouraged him to try his luck.
And he got to the audition and, you know, next thing you know, 3 auditions later, I think he'd travelled around the country to do some more auditions. Kev was he had the second lead in the Elvis show, you know, and it was amazing. It was very inspirational, you know. It's very much like, well, you can do it, you know. If Kev can do it, we all can do it.
The production of Are You Lonesome Tonight wasn't a success and the season closed early. But Kevin had caught the acting bug and wanted to be on stage, and he decided to try out for Christchurch's professional theatre, The Court.
Well, it was just before lunchtime. It was summer. I think it's the end of 1987. And I was crossing the foyer, and this very good-looking young man came up to me, and he said, "You're the director?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'd like to know whether I can act." And I took one look at him. I thought, my God, looking like that, one hopes he can. So I never turn anybody away. I think 10 minutes of your life can change somebody else's. So I said to him, "Go away, prepare an audition speech, and come back again." Well, he came back a couple of days later, and he did the last scene from The Glass Menagerie, that wonderful monologue. And so help me, I sat there in tears. I was very moved. I thought, I'm tired, I'm sick, you know, so easily taken in. Anyway, I sent away for somebody else whose judgment I trust, and they came along, and they were moved as well. I thought, well, we've got an actor on our hands. So I made an offer to him straight away, and he began at the Court Theatre at the beginning of 1988.
And it was really learn fast or go home sort of thing. Elric had a profound effect on both of our lives, but he's a very hard taskmaster as well, incredibly knowledgeable, but also incredibly willing to pass that knowledge on.
There was something about his early days with us in the theatre, with all of us at the Court Theatre, that was like so magical in the fact that his energy infected you. It just brought out the most wonderful things in yourself. It was a really extraordinary place to be when Kevin was on fire.
Oh, my dog.
My saviour.
My pleasure.
My husband.
My dear.
Oh, dear, where have they taken him?
To the Bastille.
He had a great gift for comedy, because comedy, as I suppose, ultimately, it's intellectual, it's brains. And Kevin was sex and body as well. So he had this incredible range. And to me, he was obviously a major talent. I knew ultimately somebody would come along and whisk him away.
Kev shone at the Court, gaining a strong grounding in a variety of roles. And then the call came from television.
I had planned the whole of the next season around him. All the leading young men in the plays coming up were for Kevin, because I knew that I had hold of solid gold here. Then he came to me one day and sat opposite me in my apartment and said, "Elric, I've had an offer to do a television role up north."
Mark Hadlow rang me from the Court Theatre. He said, "Listen, mate, there's this guy down here, just joined the Court, 6'3". He's been a New Zealand Colt rugby player, can sing, good looking, the whole thing."
And Robert said, "Yeah, okay, well, next time he's up, I'll, shift him into the office." So anyway, Apparently, he knocked on the door and Robert opened the door, and Robert was absolutely stunned that I had had the gall to recommend this guy who appeared, who looked like a bag of shit. He looked terrible.
So I thought, this Hadlow's having me on. This guy's playing a thing. And so he came in, he sat down, and I started asking him questions, and it was like pulling teeth at the start. He wouldn't communicate. He was sort of very, very shy. I thought, this is not what Hadlow's told me.
Within spending 2 hours, he slowly drew out of Kevin all the things that Kevin had. He drew out his natural energy, his enthusiasm.
I said, I'm going to get Janice Finn, the producer from Gloss, to meet you.
Jasmine, about those budgets, have you got...
Stop right there. I was producing the 3rd series of Gloss, and we'd been asked to bring in some younger characters. And we had Chelsea, who was the daughter, Lisa Chappell playing Chelsea, and Craig Parker was there, and Daniel Cormack. But we wanted a really spunky young guy. So I thought, well, I'll go to Christchurch, and I think we were in a TVNZ building down there, and we were doing the auditions on either the 2nd or the 3rd floor. And the lift doors opened, and Kevin stepped out of the lift. And I know this sounds really silly, and it's quite hard to describe it, but his presence was so strong. It was a mixture of charisma, sex appeal, a kind of energy that came off him. It was totally unexpected.
Ah, I want a word with you.
Me? How flattering.
Now, you just listen to me, sonny boy. You've been upsetting my poor Chelsea, and I'm not going to put up with it. Do you hear me?
I certainly do, and I think they can hear you in the next office.
I was so affected by it that I just stepped back. I stepped backwards, and I stepped straight into one of those big metal ashtrays that they used to have in the buildings outside. Stepped straight in it and fell over backwards. And I felt such a fool. And, of course, Kevin was such a wonderful gentleman.
There's usually more than one parent, Justin.
The move from Christchurch to Auckland was a huge leap of faith. Sue's job as a social worker meant regular income, and they agreed she'd remain in Christchurch for 6 months until Kev could secure a future in Auckland. He was the new boy, walking into the established cast of Gloss.
We used to have a party when we were starting the series, and so we put on this do at a restaurant in Newmarket, and Kevin came along, and I remember when he arrived that the other young guys in the series all kind of looked at him sideways because they went, oh, you know, he's awfully good looking.
And sure enough, in walks, tall, dark and handsome, with, the lips and the eyes and all this sort of thing. And this was Kevin Smith. And as much as you were prepared to hate someone who was so tall, dark and handsome, it was really, he was impossible to resist.
He walked in, this hunk of a man. My little knees went... I went, who's that guy? And Janice leaned across and went, that's your new boyfriend. I went, thanks.
I saw you using the press release.
Yes.
I think Chelsea made it work. A good features writer can turn the bus timetable to advantage.
I think for both of us it was our first mainstream telly. So we were the new kids, and we would go into Centrepoint. TVNZ used to be based in Centrepoint at the time. And we'd get these tapes out and we'd watch them in a little tiny room.
What is this?
And we'd watch these things, hating them and knowing that in a month's time this was going to air and we'd be ruined and our careers would be over.
Let's think of some of the big things that you have to your name. Of course, there is Gloss.
Yes, they had the 10th anniversary of a couple of years ago, and we were having a wonderful time. We went around to someone's house and, drinking champagne and having nibbles and that, and then it came on, then the laughter stopped. It was like, oh, it was the hair, really.
Gloss was a success, and people started to take an interest in this tall, dark, handsome southerner.
No, thanks.
In 1991, Stuart Main and Peter Wells were making the art house film, Desperate Remedies.
Desperate Remedies was a melodrama, a sort of bodice-ripping melodrama. And really, the role of melodrama is that the leads have to be absolutely remarkably good-looking. He wasn't just a pretty face. I mean, he had language skills, great language skills. He could cope with what was really quite ornate language and actually revelled in the kind of challenge, I think.
You're a woman who gets what she wants, I see that.
Please, I have no time for...
Calm. A few pleasantries can't hurt. I'm a new man, Mrs. Brooke.
Miss Brooke.
I beg your pardon. Surely.
There is nothing to be pardoned.
I'd rate him as the best leading man I've ever worked with. Completely trustworthy, wonderfully amusing, so, you know, between takes, that's really important. And just a very generous and present actor to work with. You felt really safe. I felt really safe with him.
I remember one scene where it was the first time he came to the house to meet Jennifer. They gave him this white kind of pirate shirt, completely unbuttoned to the stomach, so this chest was coming out, and of course Kevin had been working out madly. It looked fantastic. I remember Jennifer opening the door and me going in the back and going, "Oh, that's ridiculous. He's prettier than all of us."
My mistake, ma'am. My eagerness to secure employment has overtaken me.
When Desperate Remedies came out, it appeared to be on the edge of really big, of breaking out and being a big international success. So we all went off to Cannes.
Well, we hadn't actually seen the film put together at all. We'd seen some rushes and things. And we sat there together, and this film started with this, you know, incredibly lush score and these, you know, images of me, you know, galloping away there. And we both just looked at each other and absolutely giggled like two 5-year-olds. It was sort of overwhelmingly exciting. This thing we'd been shooting in this tin shed down on the waterfront was suddenly, wow, you know, huge up there on the screen. It was very exciting.
Kev's agent, Robert Bruce, never doubted Kevin's acting abilities. But right from the start, he told Kevin it would take at least 10 years for him to crack Hollywood. He believed Kev's baby-faced good looks needed time to mature, and at the same time he had to be careful about the on-screen roles he chose.
The one thing that we wanted to establish, first of all, that he was an actor, and then expose his comedy side.
I used to say, if you want to travel the straight and narrow road, I'll help you all the way. But if you want to take the road to depravity, sin and drunkenness, I'll help you all the way.
Marlon Bay was, yeah, that's when we felt he'd been taken seriously as an actor.
And the New Zealand Women's Day Award for Best Supporting Actor goes to Kevin Smith, Marlon Bay.
Jill, I'm the Land Registry Office in Auckland. Thanks very much. It was a great gig, great people. It was just a good time all round. And a couple of thanks. I'd like to thank Robert Bruce, my agent, and my wife, Suzanne. I love you, sweetheart. Thank you very much.
The thing about Kevin was, I think, and I'm sure lots of other people would say the same thing, that his looks were such, and he could play that kind of pouting or, you know, sultry kind of role really, really easily. And, you know, he got cast that way a lot of the time. But he was so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
So, all right, fly back down, right?
No, I'm heading back to Marlon Bay with you a bit later on.
Sure.
Kev became a regular on our TV screens. Some of the shows we remember, and a few we don't.
Oh, man. We've been reverse burgled. Someone broke in and gave us a whole lot of stuff. Mustn't know. Bro, you know how folks always said you're the one who got the brains? Yeah. It's wrong. It's very wrong. What?
We're started splitting, our party is in shreds. Nothing in our policies and nothing in our heads.
But none of his television appearances had any of the impact of the role he was about to get.
I told you. We should have used Samson's galvanised nails.
In '91, Kev's career broke out to a new level with a bad guy role in a series that gave him an international audience.
In the beginning, Kevin was cast as Ares, god of war, and he was supposed to be the foil to Hercules, you know, the anti-hero. And Kevin evolved that role and really made it his own by putting in a whole lot of sly humour and just contributed vastly to the whole series. Are we going to seal this deal?
Sounds like a plan.
You know, he brought something to it that even the producers hadn't sort of banked on.
I wouldn't want there to be any confusion.
No confusion. I side with you against God, save Eve. Gotcha.
It was very good for him. definitely. And he enjoyed it. I mean, you could tell when you saw him performing it. I mean, he enjoyed performing anyway, but I think in that it gave him license to be wicked.
My favourite Kevin Smith episode was in the very last series of Xena. And it really was kind of a Kevin vehicle. And he played this kind of aging demigod, you know.
There, lady. Hello.
Kevin really didn't take this whole hunk image seriously at all. Not at all.
But to his legion of fans, Kev was hot, and several times a year he'd be off to the States for Xena conventions.
Initially it was just, I'm just going over, Kevin Smith, fly me in, and all of a sudden there was phone calls coming to his room because he was listed under his name. And, you know, he'd go into a 2-hour signing session and there'd be queues of people there waiting to get signatures done.
I went to one Xena convention and, you know, people were all dressed as Ares.
He was the king. Although, I think he was a little disappointed when we were in Soho in New York and the only person that recognised him was a homeless guy with no teeth.
Stop! I want my baby down here.
The main focus for Kev's career was on-screen roles, but he never lost his passion for live theatre. Whenever he could, he'd return to the stage.
One of the most wonderful experiences I had was when I played Iago to his Othello at the Watershed.
She's disloyal. Do not like this office.
But sith I am entered into the cause so far, tricked to it by foolish honesty and love, I will go on. Without doubt, it was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my acting career.
Cursed fate that gave thee to the moor.
But Kevin used to get very emotional about roles. And if he thought that people weren't listening to it, and if he thought that people were missing the point of the play, he would start to get really pissed off.
In 2001, Kev played the lead in 2 high-profile Auckland Theatre Company productions, A Streetcar Named Desire and The Blue Room.
Of course, there was quite a big expectation, and this particular play, The Blue Room, required not just one performance, but he had to play, I think it was 10 different characters, you know, so it was a real stretch for any actor, you know, but he worked so hard.
In reviews, I know for Streetcar Named Desire, he really, it hurt him a lot that people would not get past the body. Now, hard to get past, I understand, and he understood that. He wasn't, you know, stupid about it. On the other hand, he put a lot of sensitivity into that role.
Kev loved working a live audience and the buzz of performing without the safety net of another camera take. He was a risk taker, and above all, it was the challenge of unrehearsed live performances that he enjoyed the most.
I went to see Theatre Sports one evening, and he was in that. And I had no idea that he was so talented, because Theatre Sports is a bit like, whose line is it anyway? It's all improvisation. You can't be a dummy and do Theatre Sports well.
Casually, I got him to breathe whilst I worked on his resuscitation because he had stopped breathing.
Theatre sports is a very brave thing for a lot of actors to do. You step out on stage and you have no script. And so sometimes if you're with actors that you don't quite trust, it can be a little bit terrifying. But with Kevin, you knew you were perfectly safe. You'd be able to throw him something. He'd not only use it, but he'd throw you something back, which is really important.
Doing the dishes nude, gone with the wind. I had wind doing the dishes nude, and Christ came to me. Shark ate Christ in my dishwater. A shark ate Christ who was nude in the sink.
Theatre sports, you're talking about live comedy, you're talking about live theatre. And I've never met a better improviser than Kevin in theatre sports. He was incredible.
Listen, Kev, it's about my wife, actually. She's a great woman, and she loves you. Yeah. She loves you. Yeah. That's what I'd like to think, Kev. Look, there's something I want to say to you, Kev. It's, my kingdom for a horse.
Years ago, we used to do this thing with theatre sports where we get an old film, but like, whose line is it anyway, and take the sound off and improvise around it. Well, we're all doing 1 or 2 characters. He's doing 6. He's in his own scenes with 4 characters that are all him, doing it all. And I'm on the floor laughing. I'm meant to be doing my character. He was incredible.
I've got him for a song. The guy at the glue factory said he's a nag. Take him off my hands. He's yours.
What is it, son?
Well, what's more, I can talk.
I love you madly. Passionately.
This is working out so well.
He was extraordinary to watch, and the audience again responded to his incredible performance skills, which were coupled with humility. He was never a braggart. He was never, look at me, I'm an actor. In fact, he was very shy.
The second speaker for the affirmative, the brooding, walking Department of Desire, Kevin Smith.
The first debate I did with Kevin, we'd all desperately prepared these things. We were in Queenstown, I think. And we'd had quite a late night previous. And Kevin arrived. Oh, yeah, you know, it's good. Sat down at the table, and I said, you know, what are you talking about? He said, oh, I don't know. And he unfurled this crumpled little napkin that had literally 3 lines written on it. And yeah, it's good. And I think, oh, God, we're sunk. He's no idea what he's talking about. And he got up there when it was his turn, spread this thing out on the lectern, and went, and started. And it's a hot theatre, and he's sweating. And I thought, oh, God, he's lost it. This is the moment when we see crash and burn.
That sex is the most important thing in a relationship. Yeah?
And he started out, and we were all thinking, what's he talking about? He has no idea what he's talking about. There's no logic in this thing. And then suddenly, everything started making sense.
Sex, in a very real way, is the fuel of the engine of the relationship. It doesn't go without it. And more than that, it's the lubricant. It's the Castrol GTX that protects the brittle moving parts of a relationship.
And he grabbed all these bizarre, strange, tangential ideas, and then through the course of his debate, started tying each one of them together. And this final line, which is totally made up on the spot, is this beautiful thing that wraps everything up together. And we're all sitting there going, oh, you're a god, you're a genius, you're fantastic. And he would do this with all his debates. He would never write them. He'd just take an idea or a couple of ideas and go, okay, I'm just going to work on that.
I have a relationship, and a good one, with my mechanic.
Because he had the background of music, acting, he was also well-grounded with the family, he was interested in current events, he was hugely interested in sports, that he brought this complete knowledge with a great sense of humour, with great stage presence, and he combined it all together. His improv was, to me, the best work he ever did.
Throughout his career, Kev would spend time away from home on the road. He was always busy, squeezing in appearances at numerous shows and performing at charity events. He found it hard to turn down requests for help. He was always overcommitting himself and racing from one activity to the next.
You know, he had this whole world of gym buddies that he spent a lot of time with at the gym. And he had all his rugby and league mates, and he had his family, of course, and he had all his acting friends. And he worked 12 hours a day. How did he service all those people?
But central to his life was his home in the Auckland suburb of Ellerslie, where each of his children was born and went to school. It was a place where he was just another local.
He's been involved with the football club, he's been involved with the school, fundraising, he would go to the gala day at school.
Do you know this chap?
Peter, isn't it?
Peter, no.
Peter, are you from Ellerslie?
It's Kevin. I'm from Ellerslie, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I used to live there about a year ago.
I'm Kevin from Ellerslie. You see, this is what I'm talking about. My people recognise you almost instantly.
I miss him most because we always talked about any kind of sport. He was a great Canterbury rugby fan. You know, we always talked about the rugby, how Canterbury was doing so well. You know, he just adored Canterbury.
they got the trophy 3 times in a row. That's really cool.
I mean, Kevin and his rugby, he was rugby mad. I mean, let's be honest, it was an obsession. To the extent where, when I used to come over to his place to watch Canterbury, he would train his children to flick me in the eyes with Canterbury scarves. It was all about combinations, who you'd watch with, and at what stage. Because if you were an unlucky combination, that's it, you were out, never again.
There's some big men in the French pack. The wet is going in.
On one particular game, we decided to go to a pub. It's a neutral venue. But there was a stipulation from Kevin that if we were behind at half-time, that we wanted to put our business cards on the table, this is with Jeff, Donald, myself and Kevin, and the person whose card was drawn had to leave and be ridiculed by the other people as you left, quite loudly in front of everyone else, that you were the bad omen. So, no surprises, it was me whose card was drawn in.
France leading by 13-9.
He had to go to Parnell and watch the game, walk into the bar by himself during the second half, and me and Kev stayed down at the other one. And it became apparent during the game that we weren't going to win it at all, so we were ringing him up saying, come back, and he's going, no, I'll stay till the end of the game, I can't do it. We made a bargain, so that's it. So, it's very silly.
Back in his Christchurch days, Kev had played rugby, but due to injury, he'd been forced to give it up. Moving to Auckland meant joining a gym. Clive Green's was the gym and Robert Bruce was his trainer. Kev took his training seriously. His gym sessions would begin at around 5 a.m. However, the training never improved his golf game. He was appalling. Really, really bad. He was dangerous, really. And his cricket was worse. But at his training, he'd go hard, and at times he'd push 200-kilo weights.
And he would do 6 sets of 6 reps or more with this.
Over the years, Kevin and Robert formed close friendships with 5 other gym goers.
Obviously, we're concentrating on getting Kev bigger, which is why we're not particularly looking like him.
You heard a one-on-one. Well, with Kev, we had 5 on-one. Yeah. His favourite saying was, I'll never have to do legs while tracksuit pants are still in style. Yeah, it always wear tracksuit pants.
Yeah.
They've never done legs.
Every Friday, we used to go to the cafe round the corner after we finished training, and we felt we'd earned that, you know, after the week. And when Kev was there, we used to say, oh, we won't bother doing crunches in the gym, because we laughed so much round it. At Kevin's corner is the funniest corner you'd ever find. You know, you miss him being here, and yet he is still here. We get on a subject that we knew he was, you know, he'd say, oh, Kev would be saying this now.
Kev's friends were extremely important to him, but it was his family that was central to his life.
He was a family guy. He had a lot of friends, but he was a family guy, and everything he achieved and everything he did as an actor and whatever else he did was all for Sue and for the kids more than for him, you know.
In 1991, Oscar, Sue and Kev's first son, was born. 2 years later, along came Tyrone. And then in 1997, Willard joined the family.
I am left in no doubt that without Sue, we wouldn't have had Kevin. I really feel, in Kevin's case, that she was his anchor, and she was what pulled all these extreme talents and gifts that Kevin had and anchored them, and that his children were his motivation in life.
Here's a message to my kids. Oscar, Tyrone, don't do this.
If he had to give it all up for the sake of his family, he would have. And if he meant going back to working in a factory or whatever, I think he would have done that.
Private Silver. Jeff.
In 1999, Kev auditioned for a part in the New Zealand movie Channeling Baby. It was Christine Parker's first feature film. She cast Danielle Cormack and Kevin in the lead roles.
When Kevin came to audition, I wasn't aware that he was already something of a TV star. I knew that it needed somebody that was both really masculine and believable as a soldier, and also sensitive enough and vulnerable enough to go through the sort of things the character had to go through. He prepared incredibly for Channeling Baby, you know, and took the time to go out there and meet Vietnam vets who'd had this experience.
Give me my baby!
Baby! Oh, baby! Your baby, you can't look after your baby. You can't even look after yourself.
You should never even had a baby. I want my baby. You're not guys.
It was great, you know, Danny and Kev and I, it was the first time I think we'd all worked together like that. But it was intense. It wasn't like a rollicking great time like Hercules and Xena. There were a couple of times where we found it very difficult.
Buddy, put the gun down, please. No! He's just gonna walk away scot-free. He'll be all alone again.
So I think this was an opportunity for him to show that he could really act.
I tried to come back, buddy.
Although Kev had achieved considerable success, he still hadn't cracked the goal of making it in Hollywood. But in the late 90s, Kev was given the opportunity to star in his own telly feature, Lawless.
On the ground now! Hands behind the head! Do it!
John Lawless was a character that was very much on the wrong side of the tracks. And it was something that he really did relate to. He wasn't the heroic character, he wasn't the villain. He was quite downplayed. In the first Lawless, you know, he had this big hair thing going on and the big moustache and stuff, and everyone in West Auckland had seen Lawless. And they just thought it was just the bee's knees. You know, Kev was just the man. He was them.
Beauty. It was a lot of fun. It was action-packed and guns and firing and, you know, the boys being boys, you know, drug dealers and bank robbers. And it's a lot of fun.
Think about this!
Be with you in a moment.
Following on from the first Lawless, 2 more telly features were commissioned, for which Kev decided he needed a different look.
I was in the States and I just had this clear vision of what I wanted the character to be, you know. So I just went to this Korean barber and I says, mate, whip it off. So he shaved my head. And I remember calling out the producer and saying, I have never dreaming that anyone would not think it was a great idea. I said, great idea. And I got dressed up and in costume and that. I went to the office and I just remember the look. I was like, oh, okay, no. So I had like 3 weeks to grow it back and I had this weird kind of spiny thing going on for a while.
I need to know why you did it. Can you help me do that, John?
I'll do my best.
From Xena to channeling Baby to Lawless, the roles were becoming more challenging and varied, but the dream of making it big in Hollywood remained. 2001, Kev was in the US when he got the call to audition for a role in the Bruce Willis movie, Tears of the Sun.
In the story, Bruce Willis is a ex-freedom fighter, and there's this mission that is being taken over in the jungle, blah, blah, blah. And he has to select some of his previous mates, highly skilled fighters, to go in undercover. And Kev was like his buddy, you know, that's what he was going to be in the film. And we get the call, they say, oh, they're casting this new Bruce Willis film. Can you get down to Santa Monica? And so drove down, and I just said, oh, I'll wait outside, you know, you won't be long. He was in an hour and a half. He came out, he said, oh, I seem to get on well. So we thought, oh, well, whatever. And that was it. Got the call saying, yes, you're in.
I didn't even know about the Bruce Willis thing until he got the part, really. It was all a bit of a secret, I think. And even then I said to him, so how'd you go? And, oh, yeah, oh, good, mate, yeah. I said, well, what happened? Oh, yeah, I got it. You know, I mean, this is a huge role with Bruce Willis, and he'd always underplay it, you know. That's just the way he was. And, of course, I was more excited than he was.
It was kind of a dream because it was the biggest part he'd ever auditioned for. Even when we got it, it was almost like, oh, well, wow, fancy that.
The Hollywood stardom thing, I think, for Kevin, wasn't about Hollywood stardom. It was about the niche that he would naturally be. I don't think it was in a kind of a, I want to be a star way. It was just a path.
But Kev's chance to star in a Hollywood movie wasn't to be. Having just completed a movie in China, Kev was involved in an accident. He never recovered from his injuries and died in a Beijing hospital on February the 16th, 2002. He was 38. No matter where Kev's career took him, he was always loved. He was handsome, talented, and funny. He was a great guy. See you, mate.
He never stopped being the boy from Timaru, which is fantastic. He never ever stopped that. Reaching with one hand and one hand in the earth. That's what he was always. Yeah.
New Plymouth Police would like to hear the owner of this. It was found in the road outside the Glenbrae Dairy, and police are anxious to find out exactly what it is. It's a refrigerator. Is it? Thanks, Ian. Well, that's one file we can close up.
Yeah, the world's not quite as funny as it was when Kev was here. It was pretty bloody funny then.
I suddenly stopped. A policeman was in front of me.
Don't put him on a pedestal. He'd rather you think of him while you have a beer in the afternoon rather than going and looking at his photo on a stand somewhere.
And this is the last time I'm in any trouble.
I think what I miss most about Kevin is his friendship and his mad obsession with sport, and his love, and the fact that he was like a big brother and a friend and a mentor rolled into one. And yeah, just before your time, Kev. Way before your time.
1963, it says you're 6'3" high or something. That's a lie. You're not as tall as that, are you?
Yeah. We had a very close friendship, and he hasn't gone. I think that's the one thing I can say, even after it's a fair time now. But I know that when you, I guess, have such a relationship where you just gel totally mind-wise, that then he'll be there forever.
They were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part.
All I want to say on behalf of everybody I know and the fans of our show is to his parents that you raised such a fine son, and to his wife, thank you so much for lending him to us, and to his children that you were everything to your amazing father.
If you'd like to contribute to the Kevin Smith Trust Fund, please contact Auckland Theatre Company, PO Box 6513, Wellesley Street, Auckland.